In this Roll for Grip preview, we hope you join us with this launch of one of our favorite series, A.E.G.I.S, with their new model, Second Ignition. This core set can be mixed with the previous one or be where you start, with all new robots, new mechanics, and new ways for you to play. So let's suit up and get in that robot. So while this box has completely new robots and content, it's still the core rules of A.E.G.I.S. If you want to know much more about that in detail, we not only have a review, but a how to play on the first core box that you can go check out. But basically, a quick gist, you have an army of robots fighting another army of robots. Your goal is to knock them out. Now, there are plenty of ways to do it. You can fight with the basic robots you have, but if you watch any cool robot anime or TV show, one of the cool things robots like to do is combine. If they are together, they are able to change their form in order to become a bigger robot. This not only gives you more power, but of course, more cool abilities as well, but also more ways for you to get knocked out faster. All robots fall into different categories based on the letter in the top left corner, and combinations will be based on those letters. Conveniently, those will spell out A.E.G.I.S with Assault, Evasive, Guard, Intel, and Support. Now, for those of you who are already familiar with the rules, I want to actually talk about some of the new stuff. First off, let's focus on a little bit narrower with what the new robots bring to the table. First off, attacks can now have Gambit. Pretty much you can just roll even more dice to your attack, but if you roll 2 1s, it doesn't matter what the rest are, the entire thing fails. So for those of you who like to push your luck, this is the keyword you've been waiting for. Next, we've got Quell. This one is pretty mean, as pretty much you can look at a robot and say, no, it doesn't have that anymore. So that's a way if you want to get rid of one of those pesky robots your opponent has and just doesn't have an ability that works well for you, that's a way you can put it on timeout. Then there's Blaze. Pretty much, this is like poison in many RPG games. If something's afflicted with Blaze, it's going to take damage if it tries to move. And yes, you can stack multiple Blazes. Then there is Rust, which is similar to Blaze, but instead of punishing them for moving, it's going to punish them for taking an action. So this is a great way to give yourself some more breathing room so your opponents aren't just constantly shooting at you. Finally, we've got Recharge, which actually rewards you for rolling 1s and refunds the energy for pretty much being a missed shot, which is sort of funny considering Gambit is punishing for rolling too many dice and getting 1s. This one's the opposite. So very sort of reflective abilities here, but we've got some other cool stuff too. We've got abilities now like this one here, which actually triggers during your opponent's turn and allows you to attack, meaning you're not always going to have your opponent goes and does everything, then you go and do everything. There are ways for you now to interrupt your opponent's turns. There are also plenty of cards that have different ways for you to combine and evolve your robot, which makes it a little bit easier to hit those higher letter numbered robots. Finally, one of my favorites there are now drones. There are many different ways that these can be deployed. They are sort of mini bots, and they have their own little tiles. When spawned, they cannot be used for combining, but this is a great way for you to get that little army feeling, or at the very least, if you like any of those robots who happen to have a lot of different little bots that they control and move around to attack. And of course, plenty of different new robots with different combinations for you to unlock different powers and abilities. That even in this own core set, let alone if you were to combine this with the previous one to have a whole variety of different robots with different teams and powers. But that is, of course, always a great thing to add new robots and powers and cards, but I think the real reason to take a look at this if you are a returning player are all the new modes. First, before anything, I want to quickly talk about the board here. You may notice it looks much smaller if you've seen the older A.E.G.I.S boards. That is because this is actually a 3-sided board. It has 2 small sides with pre-printed obstacles on them, but they can be folded outward to make one large board for both sides to fit whatever your game needs. So that is a really cool way to fit multiple boards in, well, technically one board, 3 for 1. First mode I want to talk about, which I think is very enjoyable, especially as soon as you combine the 2 sets, is drafting. To draft, you're secretly going to get 2 commanders as well as 5 combination robots randomly. Without showing to any other player, you're then going to draft robots of the basic level, the first level, until you have a team of 8. From there, you're going to use your combination card you got, your leaders, as well as those cards to form teams and fight each other. It should be noted that some of the restrictions on combining are removed to make it so it's not too difficult to be able to draft a team that is, well, accessible to what cards you have. This is a great way for you to try and just mess around with all the different robots you have. Like I said, there are tons of robots in this base set alone, not including if you have the first core set, where this might be the best way for you to actually see and use all the robots in one go. This is also a great way to just hit the ground running, as you just need to know the general mechanics of the game. You don't need to build a pre-built team and worry about trying to min-max in order to make sure your team is the strongest it could be. Now, the next areas are where you're going to get rewarded for that a bit more. The first one is Starpoint Arena. Starpoint Arena is more of a control game rather than just plain elimination. Here, your goal is to reduce your opponent's VP or Valor points down to 0. The main way you can do that is controlling these star points on the board. Some are in your color, some are neutral. If you control the neutral or your opponent's color, you're going to quickly drain them of their VPs. However, you can still get VPs from other events, such as knocking out your opponent's robots. And let's say yours was knocked out, unfortunately, maybe you just played poorly. Well, it's going to respawn next round. So there's a lot less punishment of accidentally getting that one core piece you need for a larger robot knocked out. You'll get it back later. So it's much more forgiving, while at the same time still rewarding you if you're able to knock out multiple of your opponent's robots. While also at a control point, you can spend some of your Valor points for some strong Valor skill abilities. Yes, this will cost you some of your Valor points, but it might give you just enough an edge to take a whole lot more, or even finish off your opponent. The final mode, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very happy about and is related to the previous mode, involves, well, no one else. It's a solo mode. This will include a boss robot in which you will have to compete against, which uses its own solo Rondo deck. It'll be drawing cards from here, which usually will match a letter, which each boss has a corresponding attack based on the letter you draw, and will trigger minions of that letter. It also has unique special attacks based on whichever boss you are playing with, and some of them can be very punishing. There are going to be a lot of returning robots here in terms of faces, but obviously with much different and tougher skills, as they are solo bosses rather than one of the combinations you can make. While each boss has 2 specific signature attacks, the team it builds of its minions, while it has a suggested list, can be crafted for whatever you feel is needed to either make the game easier or harder for whatever you want from a solo experience. I always like having more, especially just more robots to mess around with, but I feel a little bit bad as in the future, if I had to suggest which one to go for, usually you're like, oh, start with everything started with, the first box. All the modes in here alone, not even the robots, which they're cool, don't get me wrong, are so much nicer. First off, obviously, solo mode is really cool. While I've been playing with a bit more of a rough version here, the idea and the way it works is still pretty fun, and it's very interesting to see how the game works, as that solo deck doesn't feel that's actually one of the ways you lose. But to see when you know certain letters are gone or not gone yet, it really changes up your strategy, because you're like, oh, he hasn't drawn the green G yet, and I should probably take out his minions of that really quickly, or I know that's going to spawn soon, that kind of deal, or that attack should be coming. Or you've knocked out that letter, that attack's gone, I don't have to worry about that kind of attack anymore. Those should be dealt with. This is little things like that. It makes it really fun to dig into the solo mode. And while I'm sure there's more tweaking and plenty of more bosses, all the bosses, to my knowledge, are going to be 5-letter robots. But who knows, with all these stretch goals and other little bonuses that can happen throughout a campaign, you'll have to go to the project page to see for yourself. The other thing is the Starpoint Arena. It's made for people like me who are a bit cowardly. I was always afraid to hit that bigger robot, because if you missed a letter, it's gone. You can't rebuild it. So it was always a bit worrisome, and like, maybe it's better if I just stick with 2, maybe go to a 3-letter. This, I feel I can be a bit riskier and not feel as bad if I had to give up a robot and then it spawns later. And I'll eventually still get to try out that giant 5-letter robot. And the control points as well, I really like that, because there's a lot more interesting decisions of not just, oh, I should kill that thing. It's like, that's in the middle, but if I get that point, I can do some really fun stuff there. So I really like it, and it's probably my preferred gameplay method over the simple elimination mode. I think that's more of a preference thing, but even though if it's a preference thing, it's still a cool idea and system, and giving you the option there is always just very nice to have. And then, of course, there's the draft mode, which to me is almost a must in some of these things, not because I prefer drafting, but I really love drafting. But the problem with a game like this is there are games, not just this one, but let's take Arkham Horror or any trading card game. People don't want to be like, oh, I have to come in and make a deck first and bring the list here, and then you can build it with your parts. The drafting mode pretty much lets you put the box down, explain the rules, and then pass out the cards. It reduces the complexity of the combination, so people just have to worry about the letters, and it allows people to just sit and play the game. And for those of you who have a lot of the robots, it lets you see more of the unique robots. You're not playing with whatever the meta is. You get to try out some new stuff. Overall, it is, once again, I really feel bad because all these new modes feel like musts now. There should be a solo mode. The draft mode lets you just start this game out without having to worry about any pre-built things. Obvious, the Starpoint mode, that, even though it's my favorite thing, is probably the least important compared to the other two in terms of what needs to be added in a game like this. I enjoyed it a lot more, but it's hard to say quick starting and solo play for getting people to be interested in trying this out. And I'm still excited about this game, more so with these new versions. Yes, I played prototypes, and I know some of the robots are still in the work of being balanced, especially some of the solo bosses. But the mechanics of those new modes, even all the new robots, yes, those powers are cool. And it was really fun to just burn a whole lot of people. But the modes just make this feel like it's one of those times when you play a game and you just wouldn't play it without those. All of those are just feel like they need to be core to all future Aegises. And I'm really glad that they're adding this. And it makes it much easier to say you should go and sit down and try this out, especially if you're a giant robot fan. Yeah, I'm one too, and I like Power Rangers and Gundam. You can see them on the other set. You will feel just as happy to check out all these cool new robots. There are tons for you to see. You're going to really feel rewarded and love the cool combination designs. And now with all the new modes, it's never going to be easier for this to hit the table. If you want to learn more, I'll have a link down below to the crowdfunding project page where you can check out everything new and better, little cuter graphics, as well as, actually picking it up and buying it. Let me know if you backed the previous Aegis project and what your thoughts on all these new modes are. And if you're new, how'd you get here? Are you here because of tabletop? Or are you here because of giant robots? I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comments down below. But for now, thank you so much for checking out this preview. Please check out the preview page, as this has been Roll for Crit.